The episode begins as we see two students, Hui-soo and Bong-seok, who are close friends. Hui-soo has the unique ability to rapidly recover from injuries, which she inherited from her father. Meanwhile, Bong-seok has flying powers and ends up floating when his emotions become out of control. Hui-soo has recently transferred to Jeongwon High School, where she spends her days studying and working hard on her sports. During her practice, Bong-seok is always by her side, and even though he knows she won't get hurt, he insists on keeping the floor clean so she won't slip. One day, after practice, Hui-soo asks Bong-seok why he's never asked about the fight that made her transfer schools. Bong-seok says that he's been avoiding the topic to protect her from reliving painful memories. Hui-soo then opens up about her life, starting with the tragic loss of her mother in a car accident and explaining how she ended up at their current school. In a flashback, we see that Hui-soo and her dad, Ju-won, used to move a lot after her mother died. But when Hui-soo started high school, her dad decided they should settle down so she could focus on studying and college. Hui-soo was thrilled, and her dad was also happy to see her that way. However, trouble began when a new girl, Hai-won, arrived at their senior class. She was from a wealthy family, which made some girls jealous. A group of bullies formed and started tormenting Hai-won relentlessly. At first, Hui-soo ignored it to avoid causing problems for her dad. But as time went on, the bullying became more intense, shifting from emotional torture to physical abuse. Meanwhile, everyone in the classroom was too afraid to stand up to the bullies, so Hui-soo took the brave step of reporting the bullying to the teacher. Sadly, the bullies only received a light reprimand and became even more aggressive. The next day, the bullies confronted the class, demanding to know who had reported them. When the class president tried to intervene, they violently attacked him. Hui-soo, feeling guilty for reporting and her classmates' beating, decided to tolerate this until the end of the school year. But things only continued to get worse for Hai-won. With only 120 days left until their final exams, Hui-soo couldn't bear to watch Hai-won being bullied any longer. She finally confronted the bullies, and they fought on the school grounds. She found herself up against 17 other students in an intense battle. Suddenly, one of the students took out a razor knife and cut Hui-soo's throat, while another hit her head with a heavy stone. However, to everyone's shock, Hui-soo healed within seconds, leaving her unhurt. In the end, she was the only one standing, without a single scratch. Due to this incident, Hui-soo was expelled from her school since she was completely fine while the other students were severely injured. The rest of the students were too frightened to approach her, and Hui-soo herself was scared by her powers. So she asked her father, Ju-won, about this, and he explained that she had inherited the power from him, and her mother would have been very happy to know this. Ju-won then spent all of his money to pay for the settlement to avoid the other students from pressing charges. Hui-soo's reputation was tarnished, and the only school willing to accept her was Jeongwon High School. In the present, we see Ju-won dealing with a customer who had been rude to him the day before. This time, Ju-won angrily confronts him, and when the customer sees a gunshot wound on Ju-won's hand, he gets scared and pays his money. On his way out, Ju-won notices a large police presence in the building. He's especially concerned about the presence of National Intelligence Security agents. He causes a little mishap to draw out the NIS agents so he can identify them. In another scene, we see Bong-seok's mother, Mi-hyun, who learns of a nearby murder on the internet and decides to see the event from a distance. She witnesses Ju-won's trick and then watches him leave, but fails to see his face. In the next scene, Bong-seok and Hui-soo head out for lunch. During their meal, the two discuss about how memories work. Hui-soo then opens up about the only memory she has of her mom, which is from her mom's accident. She's unsure whether her mom was crying or smiling at her during that moment. After their meal, they go back to the auditorium, where Hui-soo thanks Bong-seok for being there with her. Meanwhile, an assassin named Frank is on the lookout for these children gifted with special powers. He also has special power to heal rapidly like Ju-won and Hui-soo. Frank visits the funeral service of someone he recently killed to check if the deceased had any kids. However, he learns that she only had one biological child who passed away years ago. Days later, a new week dawns as the students return to school. To Hui-soo's surprise, there's a new student in the classroom, and it turns out to be none other than Hai-won. However, it appears to be a pleasant surprise for Hui-soo, and she smiles as Hai-won introduces herself. In the next scene, we see a flashback of the life of a man named Guy-do. He's the son of the Electric Man and has electric powers. He realized his abilities during a school science class about electricity. After high school, he wanted to be an athlete but lacked the skills. A teacher advised him to try the entertainment sector, leading Guy-do to audition for TV. Initially, Guy-do's chances in the audition don't look great, but he surprises the judges with his ability to generate electricity, making it clear he's the right choice for the role. While the job is enjoyable, it comes with its challenges, so he always wears gloves to control his powers. Despite this, accidents happen from time to time, destroying some equipment. During this time, Guy-do leads a happy life with his mom's support, who often brings him food. Sadly, one day his glove gets cut just before a performance, resulting in him accidentally electrocuting a fellow performer and nearly causing a major accident. Due to this incident, the producers decide to let him go, as the incident scares the kids too much. That evening, Guy-do returns home and finds her mom lying unconscious on the floor. Sadly, she passes away soon, and it's an incredibly tough time for him. At this time, he also meets his estranged father, with whom he hadn't spoken in years. However, Guy-do holds no bad feelings towards his dad, because even though he was not physically present, he provided financial support when needed. Shortly after, Guy-do begins the search for a new job. He sends out countless resumes, but to no avail. One evening, he visits his dad to share memories of his mom through the digital battery that was in his lock. It turns out that their ability allows them to see memories by touching objects. Guy-do finds his power frustrating, believing it only causes harm, but his dad tries to assure him. One night, Guy-do goes out for drinks and comes across a bus with electrical issues. He uses his special power to fix it, which surprisingly leads to a job opportunity as a bus driver. While on the job, he forms a special bond with Bong-seok, who always greets him warmly and brightens his day. However, tragedy strikes one day when Guy-do receives the news of his father's passing. At the funeral, he takes an item from his father's shop and witnesses a vision of his father's brutal murder by Frank. Seeing this causes immense pain in Guy-do, and he breaks down in tears. Days later, Mi-hyun gets Bong-seok ready for school, but he appears to be feeling down. At school, Hui-soo also notices his somber mood while eating lunch. When she asks him about it, Bong-seok assures her that he's fine, but Hui-soo isn't convinced. Just as Bong-seok is about to open up, Hai-won joins them, mentioning she's alone. Hui-soo warmly welcomes her, and Bong-seok does the same. While they chat, they notice their class president, Gang-hoon, eating alone. They briefly consider joining him, but decide to let him be. Moments later, Gang-hoon is approached and bullied by a guy named Ki-soo. It turns out that Gang-hoon has extraordinary powers, including immense strength and speed. A few days back, when Ki-soo had caused trouble, Gang-hoon had given him a severe beating. This beating only fueled Ki-soo's determination to expose Gang-hoon's true power. However, Gang-hoon manages to compose himself and endures the humiliation. Ki-soo even goes as far as taking Gang-hoon's glasses and dumping them in food. However, once Gang-hoon leaves, Hui-soo retrieves the glasses for him. Sometime later, Hui-soo bumps into Gang-hoon at the auditorium and hands him back his glasses. She admires his ability to stay calm and avoid violence. Gang-hoon thanks her for the glasses, and Hui-soo reveals that it was Bong-seok who cleaned it for him. As Gang-hoon gets ready to leave, Hui-soo asks him to switch on the air conditioner. He does so and shyly mentions that his dad also owns a shop before hurrying away. In another scene, Frank sees flashbacks of his childhood running through a cornfield in Iowa and a vision of a woman singing at a jazz club. Meanwhile, at the NIS office, Officer Young-jun finds out that the person responsible for killing 3 of his superhuman agents is none other than Frank. It turns out that Frank is a Korean native who is forcefully adopted in the United States. He grew up there, and his codename suggests he's the 6th child to endure this coerced adoption and training. A CIA agent brought him to the US as a child, erasing all records of his past, and now Frank is here to kill superhumans in Korea on behalf of the United States. After this, Young-jun wastes no time and orders his secretary to arrange an immediate meeting with the Americans on the other side. That evening, Frank receives a text message about his next target, which turns out to be Mi-hyun. Frank immediately stops drinking and heads over to her restaurant. Meanwhile, at school, Bong-seok realizes that his phone is dead. Worried that his mom will become anxious if he's unreachable, he hurriedly leaves. On his way, he's happy to see Guy-do back at his job. Bong-seok warmly greets him, saying how great it is to have him back. He admits to being worried, and Guy-do feels emotional hearing this. At the NIS office, Young-jun holds a meeting with the U.S. counselor named Mark and confronts him about the ongoing situation. Young-jun doesn't beat around the bush and directly discloses that he is aware Mark is a CIA agent operating undercover as a counselor. He says that if they are to negotiate a deal, Mark must terminate the operation immediately. Mark tries to deny the accusations, but Young-jun threatens to talk with China's Ministry of State Security. Meanwhile, Frank arrives at Mi-hyun's restaurant and places an order for food. Mi-hyun, with a keen sense of danger, discreetly texts Bong-seok, advising him not to come home. Unfortunately, Bong-seok's phone is dead, and he doesn't receive the message. Soon, Bong-seok arrives home, and Mi-hyun quickly treats him like any other customer, and addresses him as Sir. After this, Frank strikes up a conversation with Bong-seok. He casually mentions being from Iowa, and Bong-seok, in a slip of the tongue, reveals that he lives there and attends Jeongwon High School. Mi-hyun then discreetly reaches for her gun and cautiously approaches Frank. Elsewhere, Young-jun has Mark cornered and is applying pressure on him to abort the mission. Having no other option, Mark sends a text to Frank, asking him to hold off for a while. Frank sees the message just as he's about to attack Mi-hyun. He settles the bill, thanks Bong-seok for the chat, and leaves the restaurant. A terrified Mi-hyun follows closely behind, quickly locking the restaurant's door. After this, she harshly scolds her son for not receiving her message. He tries to explain the situation, but she is having none of it. She then starts crying and questions why he wouldn't follow simple instructions. Bong-seok asks his mother why she's so on edge and who Frank is. However, she remains silent and does not answer his question. In the next scene, Frank has another flashback where he keeps remembering the woman in the jazz club who was his mom. As he called out to her, a group of soldiers forcibly pulled him out of the club. Frank was then taken to America, where he underwent grueling training alongside other boys to become an assassin. It was a merciless environment, a matter of killing or be killed, and his survival instincts kept him alive. He recalls a vivid memory of running through a vast cornfield, dodging bullets from soldiers, while his friends were shot and killed. While Frank is driving, he receives a text from Mark telling him to kill the next target, who happens to be Ju-won. Distracted by the message, he nearly gets into an accident with Guy-do's bus. Guy-do sees Frank's face and recognizes him as the man who killed his father. Quickly, he evacuates his bus passengers and initiates a reckless car chase with Frank, resulting in a series of accidents. The chase leads them to an open field in the middle of nowhere. Frank is confused about why Guy-do is following and attacking him. Guy-do demands answers about his father's murder, but Frank brutally beats him and drives off. Following this, Frank makes his way to Ju-won's restaurant. There, he spots Ju-won on a scooter and decides to chase him down. Frank then repeatedly runs over Ju-won, causing severe injuries. Luckily, Ju-won heals quickly and manages to cling to the truck when Frank parks it. This leads to an intense and violent fight between the two. During their struggle, Ju-won gains the upper hand and finally kills Frank. He then gets rid of the files on the agents by setting the truck on fire. However, he doesn't gather much information from Frank, except that Frank was investigating Jeongwon High School. The following morning, Mi-hyun gets Bong-seok ready for school, reminding him to keep his phone close and respond quickly when she calls. She also insists that he comes straight home after school. As days pass by, Bong-seok keeps his distance from Hui-soo due to his mother's concerns. He no longer stays after class to watch her train. and their interactions become minimal. Meanwhile, Hui-soo respects his need for space. From the outside, it seems like the students are diligently preparing for their final exams. However, parents, especially Ju-won and Mi-hyun, remain on high alert to protect their children. With just one day left before the finals, Hui-soo decides to reach out to Bong-seok. She sends him a text asking what he's up to. Bong-seok is excited by her message and replies that he's getting ready to sleep. Hui-soo wishes him luck on his test for the next day and a good night. Then she notices that his lights are still on, and he realizes she's nearby. He then opens his window and notices her in the distance. She tries to leave, but he asks her to wait and flies through his window. The two then talk about the reasons behind their recent distance. Hui-soo thought he needed to focus on his studies, so she gave him space. However, Bong-seok clarifies that he was simply following his mother's curfew. Hui-soo places a large stone on his legs to prevent him from flying away and confesses that she missed him, surprising Bong-seok. He then admits that he missed her too, but their conversation is interrupted by the sight of the season's first snowfall. The next morning, the senior students assemble in the gym for their fitness test. The teacher requests that the students allow Hui-soo some space to practice on one side of the gym. While the students engage in various activities, a basketball post unexpectedly becomes loose and starts hurtling toward Hui-soo. Bong-seok tries to fly to her rescue, but is hindered by the weights on his legs imposed by his mother. However, Gang-hoon manages to reach her at a supersonic speed and save her from the impending danger. Meanwhile, a student captures the entire incident on a camera, and Gang-hoon's secret is now exposed. The student quickly shares the video online, and it quickly spreads like wildfire, going viral. This poses a significant problem for the NIS, as they scramble to try and delete the video from the internet. However, Young-jun argues that their efforts are in vain because the project has now been exposed, and all their hard work has been rendered useless. Meanwhile, Ju-won overhears his customers talking about the viral video, and Mi-hyun comes across it on her social media timeline. The parents also start to worry about what this exposure means for their children. After this, Bong-seok is disappointed by his failure to save Hui-soo. That evening, he decides to remove the weights from his legs and starts practicing his flying skills. Moments after, Mi-hyun discovers him during this practice and scolds him. Bong-seok argues that his mother's restrictions have been holding him back, and he couldn't save Hui-soo. Mi-hyun loses her composure and shouts at her son, asking whether he wants to meet the same fate as his father. Bong-seok then narrates that his mother has never talked about his father, and he has kept a secret from her. He has never revealed to her that he has recurring dreams that are actually memories of him as a child, in which he is flying into the sky with his father. The episode comes to an end with a soldier heading toward North Korea's security headquarters. He salutes his superior, who is watching the viral video of Jeongwon High School. Following this, the superior gives the soldier orders to go to South Korea.